I am no longer willing to sacrifice the welfare of children on the altar of feminism. I heard this quote in February of 2026, stated by Rachel Wilson on a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, episode number 2460, released on February 26th. She came on the show to discuss her book, Occult Feminism: The Secret History of Women's Liberation. Rachel Wilson is an Orthodox Christian writer and a cultural commentator. She argues that the feminist movement was driven by occultist and Marxist influences to dismantle traditional family units. Key topics from the interview include the origins of feminism, where Wilson claims feminism was a manufactured social revolution aimed at pushing women into the workforce rather than a grassroots movement for equality, like we have been led to believe. Occult Marxist influences. She also discussed the role of elites and ideologues in shifting the cultural norms over decades. The decline in happiness. Rachel Wilson argues that despite the goals of modern feminism, women's overall happiness has decreased over the last several decades, and increases in uses of antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, etc. The statistics of that really kind of support this argument. And finally, the role of women. She touches on the intentional restructuring of society and the undermining of traditional family structures. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is not a dig at working mothers. I myself am a working mother, so I want to make that very clear. But when I heard this episode, it was like the liberation and the validation that I have so desperately been looking for. And I can support that feeling by hearkening back to a recent episode, well, probably one of my earlier episodes. I think I recorded it last fall, titled Working Mom Woes: Purpose, Passion, and Career. In that episode, I wrestled with something a lot of women quietly feel but rarely say out loud: the tension between our career ambitions or our perceived social pressure need to get a job and be a working mom, and motherhood itself. When I listened to the episode, like I said with Rachel, her perspective just hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting. It forced me to revisit an uncomfortable question that's been sitting on the back of my mind for years, and one which I alluded to in the episode I recorded last fall. That question, and I hope that if you're a parent listening to this, most notably a mother, I'm wondering how this is going to hit you and if it will hit you in the same way that it hit me. So I'm going to ask you to dig deep when you hear this question and just sit with it for a while. Now, maybe the answer will come to you quickly, and that's great. That tells me you have high confidence and you're probably doing work that you love. But the question is, what if the version of success many of us were sold isn't actually the life we would have chosen if we had known the full story? As a working mom, that conversation, again, it resonated with me so deeply, because if I'm being honest, I learned something a little too late. I would have absolutely chosen differently. I would have absolutely made the decision to be a stay-at-home mom and raise my kids until I felt like they were at a point and I was at a point where I could go back to work without feeling the immense guilt that many mothers feel being a working mom. So today's episode is a continuation of that conversation, but this time it's going to go a little bit deeper into the cultural narratives around feminism, motherhood, and career, and ask whether the modern script for women is actually serving us or hurting us. Now, again, if you're in a career that you love, this is no shade. If you're a happy mother and you're happy in your career, you are winning on both sides of the front, and I congratulate you. But I think if we're being honest, many of us know that that is not the case for millions of working moms out there. Full disclosure, I haven't purchased Rachel's book just yet, but I am definitely planning on reading it when I get through the book that I'm reading right now. And as soon as I'm done, I'm actually now excited to get through the book I'm reading right now so that I can dive into this book and really see the supporting evidence that she has, that she discussed in the Joe Rogan episode. Again, I really implore you to listen to that episode if you don't have time to sit and read the book, or you want to kind of skip the book, because she really gives a good detailed outline of what she covers and the research that she did. And it's really kind of sickening and mind blowing. Number one, her core thesis: feminism was not an organic grassroots movement. Wilson argues that modern feminism was not purely a spontaneous movement for equality, but was influenced by the following: elite political interests, intelligence agencies, and ideological networks. Let me stop right there because this is going to sound a little conspiratorial and very, tinfoil hat-esque. But guys, if you've read the book Chaos, and if you know anything about the JFK assassination and a myriad of other things that have come to light over the last several years, hello, the Epstein files, I think we can all agree that there's a lot of corruption in our intelligence agencies. And so this came as no surprise when I heard her talking about this. And you've got to hearken back to the time when this really was on the rise, and the amount of sort of mad professor, mad scientists that were running around the world at this time. Think of Nazi scientists, for instance, in the 40s. We're coming upon almost 100 years since World War II. So a lot of this is going to seem completely far-fetched to us in 2026. But at the time this movement started, it's actually really par for the course and not surprising at all to anyone who's been paying attention. All right, cultural movements that reshaped family and gender roles. She suggests feminism helped expand the labor force and the consumer economy by encouraging dual income households and shifting women from domestic roles into wage labor. Her framing is that women were told liberation meant career independence, but that narrative may have served an economic and political goal instead of a woman's independence role. Before I move on, a few things that I want to say about this. Now, again, if you're being honest, you can have a 50-50 split here. It makes complete sense to me when we see today the amount of disgusting government overspending, and we all know that our country is in trillions of dollars in debt. It makes sense to me that, of course, let's get women into the workforce, because what does that equal for the government? And this is not conspiratorial. This is a real thing. What does it equal for the government? It means, yay, more people that we can tax, more money that we can collect. And the sad thing about that is that you've got all of these women in the workforce today, many of them dominating, many of them starting to surpass men. And yet, even with all that additional taxable income, our government still couldn't keep it together. And so while their plan worked to get people, a whole other subset of the gender, into the workforce, it really pisses me off even more that we are in the pickle that we are in today with our country's deficit. All right, second thing, alleged historical links between feminism and occult movements. A central argument in her book is that many early feminist figures participated in spiritualist or occult circles. These are not good ones, okay? I think we hear the word spiritual and we think, oh, butterflies, rainbows. But no, not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking like creepy Charles Manson type cults, okay? And Rachel interprets these as influential in shaping the feminist ideology. Feminism, like everything else, has its centered people and its radicalized people. And I think we can all agree that there's a big difference between a radicalized feminist and a more centered, more grounded feminist. Some of the examples she discusses: Victoria Woodhull, involved in spiritualism and claimed communication with spirits. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she wrote the Women's Bible, which challenged Christian doctrine. Spiritualist movements, theophilosophy, and goddess symbolism. She claims these movements promoted ideas such as gender fluidity, which we are seeing more and more today, anti-Christian sentiment, and social and sexual liberation. These themes, she argues, later became embedded in the feminist ideology, and we are seeing them today in full transparency. There is no hiding it. To be clear, I have no problem with someone who is born in the body of a man and feels like a woman, What I have a problem with is when that is shoved down our throats as if we have to just accept that this is something we would allow for our children to decide before their prefrontal cortex is a fully formed organ in their brain. I'm saying that wrong, but I'm going to keep it, whatever. You guys know what I'm saying. Their prefrontal cortex is not yet fully formed. And in many states in this country, we have allowed children to make the decision to transition their gender. There are many books, which I will do my best to include in the show notes, many of which tell stories about parents struggling with a child who wanted to transition and what that looked like. And those children really did want to transition and they really did feel better being in a woman's body and it all worked out. But there are many other books, you guys, that support a lot of these kids were just confused. It was awkward teenager time. Maybe they had a friend who was kind of talking like this or feeling this way. And they just wanted social acceptance because they were feeling pushed out. And so they decided they wanted to go ahead and transition. And these people had their boobs lopped off and were put on hormone blockers. And later in life realized this was a mistake. I was just going through a weird time. And now they can't have kids and they can't have orgasms. These are facts about what happens to people during gender transitioning. So my argument for that is just, please, they need to be adults. There's no reason why they can't like dress like a girl or act like a girl or any of those things while they're still a child. You can't drink until you're 21. You can't get a tattoo until you're 18. There's so many things that children are not legally able to do, but for whatever reason, in many states, they are allowed to make the decision or their parents agree to let them make this radical change before they are like fully adults. Now, I'll give it to a lot of parents out there. You know your kid best. But if we are being honest, a lot of parents are just freaking virtue signalers and they're all on board the second they hear their kid say those words. And those are the kids who oftentimes end up regretting things later because they were just going through a confused time in their life, but their parents were like quick to jump on the train because maybe their social circle or their political ideology encouraged them to just go for it. And so it's a delicate balance for the parents who truly know, like, my kid can transition and it's going to be okay. They're not going to regret it. But there's a whole subset out there that is not the case for. And all I'm asking is for us to be honest about that and to acknowledge that. Number 3, cultural consequences Rachel believes resulted from feminism. She argues that modern Western society has experienced unintended consequences from feminist ideology. She frequently cites family structure changes, things like declining marriage rates, more single-parent households, and less emphasis on motherhood. I can attest to this. To me, this seems very real. We are having less babies. And why wouldn't we be having less babies, ladies? If we're working full time, it's like impossible. It's impossible to try to have 3, 4, 5 kids with a full-time job. It's so hard. It's hard enough just being a mom in general. But what we're missing is the fact that moms went back to work, but they never stopped being moms, which I don't care who you are. If you cannot acknowledge that being a mom is in and of itself a job and one of the hardest jobs, then you're lying to yourself. And so I know that this was true in my circle where I grew up, and I grew up in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. It was not something that was preached to us. Get married young, have kids young. Polar opposite for me. It was go to college. You don't need a man. You have to be able to rely on yourself. You don't have to have kids in your 20s. Women are having babies in their 30s, even in their 40s, blah, blah, blah. You can wait. It's okay. And I had kids in my 30s. I had 2 kids. And again, I know now I would have absolutely loved to have had more children, but I felt like I was running out of time, number one, and I felt like it was impossible given the fact that all of my life, I felt like the career was going to be the most important thing to me and in my life. And I went to college and I got my 4-year degree and then I got my 2-year degree. And I was very career driven because I felt like that would shape me. And then I had my first child and I realized, no, this is what's going to shape me because this is literally my legacy. I'm not somebody who started a company. I'm not someone who made something, who built something, who changed the world. You know, I haven't done that yet. And so for me, it's a very obvious answer. And this really rings true to me because that's what I heard. That's what so many of my friends heard. Second thing, work and life in balance. Rachel claims many women were encouraged to prioritize career early in life and later feel regret about delayed family formation. I just said that, right? I'm being totally honest with you. That was a feeling for me and one which I totally regret. Now, would I have had kids in my early 20s? No. Like I still don't know that I would have felt comfortable then because there just was things I wanted to do in my life at that time and I had a great time. I don't know how much of that I would take back, maybe a little bit if I'm being honest, but I don't know that I would have wanted to have kids that young. But in a perfect world, I would have been married at 25 and I would have had my first kid at like 27, maybe 28. And I would have loved to have at least three children, maybe four, by the time I turned 35. So that'd have been a lot of baby making, year over year. But in a perfect world, if I can go back now, that's what I would have done because nothing brings me more joy than my family. They also are the biggest pains in my ass, but nothing brings me more joy than my family. And I think about how I grew up in a household with three siblings. I'm one of four children, and we were very close in age. And, as much as we might have like thrown slings and arrows at each other and fought relentlessly, they're some of my best friends to this day. And I really like love and adore all of my siblings and I would like kill for them. I just love and adore them all so much. And we have a great relationship and we rely on each other and we're there for each other. And I realize now that because I didn't go on to have more kids, I mean, I can make jokes, right? I only have two kids, so it's a 50-50 shot. Either they're going to grow up and be best buds or they're going to hate each other. Like if I would have had more, I think the dynamic would go up, but whatever. It's not the emphasis of my argument. It's just a fun point that I want to make. And that's why, I love that we have such a close group of friends with kids the same age and why I love being close to my family and, getting the kids together because it's cool to have cousins. It's cool to have a great big family and have a good time. And I grew up and got to experience that and I loved it. It was such a joy. And it's so hard to do that in today's day and age when we're all working and life is so busy and life is so crazy and families are so disconnected and everybody's just busy like doing their own thing and living their own life. And I really miss the school of thought where you grow up, you get married, you have kids, you raise your kids, but your family helps you. It's a whole village. It takes a village. And then, the grandparents pass down the stories and the pastimes and the traditions, and they're the foundation of the family and just all of these things. It's such a beautiful story and something that we've gotten away from in modern society, which is truly, truly a shame and truly, truly heartbreaking. Last one is male social decline. So, one of the things that Rachel and Rogan discussed on the episode is how young men are struggling to find partners. Statistically, this is true. And a lot of these swipe right apps aren't helping. It's helping in the sense that you kind of like have the pick of the litter, but it's not helping in the sense that a lot of these don't end up in true, healthy, formidable relationships. And when we have spent literally decades spreading the message of girls rule and boys rule and girls can do everything that boys do and girls are so much stronger than boys and girl power and girl boss and queen this and queen that and completely just forgetting about the boys, you end up with a lot of young men just truly lacking the confidence and the wherewithal to even approach a woman because we have kind of inadvertently turned them into incels. Dating apps, like I said, the swiping right. Dating apps concentrating attention on a small percentage of men and social isolation among young males. So many men, so many boys are living at home with their mommy and daddy for periods of time much longer than ever before in society. Now, half of that is cost of living. A lot of people just truly cannot afford to go out and live on their own anymore, which is a freaking damn shame and just goes right back to the fact that I'm so pissed off about the deficit in this country and the inflation caused by government overspending. But the other half of that, if you're being honest, can be attributed to this emphasis on feminism and forgetting about raising our boys up at the same time that we are raising up our girls and giving our boys the confidence at the same time that we are raising up our girls. Number 4, her religious framework. Wilson approaches the topic through a Christian worldview. Her husband actually has a podcast, I think, called The Crucible, and he's been on Rogan as well. Very interesting episode, very interesting take. Another one I'm obviously going to suggest that you listen to, but she argues that Christianity historically elevated women spiritually. Modern feminism rejects Christian family models. Feminism sometimes aligns with ideologies that are hostile to Christianity. Sad, but true. She contracts Christian traditions like reverence for the Virgin Mary with what she sees as modern feminist hostility towards motherhood or traditional roles. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, abortion. I happen to be pro-choice, but if I'm being honest, it's a horrible decision to have to make, and it is one that comes with lifelong regret. Now, maybe some women don't feel this regret, and I really wonder if that's just chalked up to our attitude about abortion, which is just like, it's so easy, go do it. It's not even a human, it's just a clump of cells. Regardless of your religious beliefs or whether you're an atheist or whatever, we have turned abortion into a thoughtless, emotionless procedure that's like a free-for-all to all women in society, and we perched it up like it was this wonderful blessing on women's liberation. While I respect the argument that there was a period of time for a long time before the modern era that women were probably impregnated against their will, raped, whatever have you, arranged marriages, just horrible situations, and what that must feel like and be like. And this is why I'm pro-choice with full transparency. It's completely against what my religion teaches me. But like in my soul, I can't say that all abortion is wrong. And I can't say that there aren't circumstances under which I would support it or I do support it. But I'm a realist. And at the end of the day, you are terminating your pregnancy. And that should come with a heavy heart and a lot of begging for forgiveness, because it to me, it is not a decision that should be made lightly, and it is not a decision that should be celebrated. If you want to celebrate the fact that we have the freedom in the majority of this country to have an abortion, then I am happy to celebrate that we have that right versus having to go into a back alley and all kinds of terrible things happening. But to celebrate it as a form of regular birth control, which I don't care who you are, if you're being real and you look at the statistics from Planned Parenthood, it is being used as a form of birth control by a population of women who know damn well what they're doing, who know damn well what they're getting into, and who have multiple abortions. And this is where it becomes a problem. Again, when the pendulum swings way too far in the opposite direction, because we have glorified abortion. And when I see women out there, radical feminists, I'm just going to call it what it is. When I see these women out there putting it on, posters and protesting and saying, I had 4 abortions, I had 2 abortions, I had 1 abortion, like so proud to have had an abortion. That's gross. It's just gross. I don't care what situation you're in, even if you were, God forbid, raped. Having an abortion is still not something that should instill a sense of pride in you. You have gone through an incredibly hard thing, and now you have to go through a subsequent incredibly hard thing, and nothing in you should feel a sense of pride for going through that. What I believe you should feel is a sense of true heartbreak and true heartache, because it's not an easy decision, and it shouldn't be put into a light where it seems like it's an easy decision, and it shouldn't be celebrated like it's this wonderful, amazing thing. We need to put it into the perspective of we are fortunate to have this as an option, but it should be a last resort. And we should start celebrating motherhood, celebrating pregnancy, celebrating the nuclear family instead of promoting, you don't need a man, you can raise babies on your own. Moms can do it all. Moms can do everything. Moms cannot be dads. Sometimes we have to put that dad hat on because our husband might pass away or something really unfortunate. But we're not dads, we're moms. And abortion should not be celebrated for the mere process of having an abortion. What should be celebrated is that we have the ability to do it if we truly, truly need to do it. Not that we've had 4 of them and we should be proud of that. To me, that's honestly disgusting. And I have yet to hear a counter argument that would make me change my mind. Number 5. Her broader message to women. Despite the provocative framing, Wilson says her goal is not to attack women, but to encourage reevaluating the narrative of liberation. Her key messages are women should have real choice between career, family, or both. Again, this goes back to my episode, Purpose, Passion, Career. What do you want to do? What really fuels you? What can support your journey in your career and your journey as a mother? Society should value motherhood and family stability above everything. If we're not having babies, our society will cease to exist. I've said it before, I'll say it again. So we should be putting so much value and so much stock into have the babies, have the family. And again, it's not just about having the babies, but it's starting with the nuclear family. Any statistic that you look at always points to the success, well-being, and happiness of a child who's coming from a nuclear family, even if you're in a marriage where mom and dad fight or whatever. Like, unless things are really shitty at home, 9 times out of 10, the nuclear family is the way to go. It just truly provides more stability for the child, like a deeper foundation for the child. So just think about that. And then historical narratives about feminism should be examined critically. I think you're getting a lot of that from what I've cited so far. As always, I like to give a little bit of a counter perspective, and I'm trying to sprinkle that in as we go. But major criticisms of her work, things that are widely disputed. Number 1, historical overreach. Some scholars argue that spiritualism or occult participation by some suffragists does not represent the broader feminist movement. You've got to listen to the episode and read the book, and then you make the call. Don't just hear that and be like, yeah, that's me. That's what I agree with. No, read her book, which I'm going to be doing. Maybe I'll do another episode after I read the book, and listen to the episode and hear for yourself and formulate your thoughts and opinions at that point. Number 2, conspiracy framing. Claims about intelligence agencies shaping feminism are often seen as speculative. Again, read the book. It's my understanding she's got a lot of resources, a lot of fact checking went into the book. So do your own research and make your own judgment. Number 3, selective interpretation. This is true with anything. Historians say many early feminists were motivated primarily by legal equality, property rights, and voting rights. It wasn't all about occult ideology. I can tell you that in the episode, she does do a little bit of a deep dive on this, and it's pretty mind-blowing what she uncovers about voting rights in general for both men and for women. However, I want to say that a lot of people will write to me after this episode, just like they did with my first one, and they'll say things like, oh, you just want us to all be barefoot and pregnant, in the kitchen, like taking care of our husbands. And what I will say is, well, what's wrong with that? This goes back to the negative connotation about motherhood. No, I don't want all women to be barefoot and pregnant unless they want to be. What I want is for society to start putting more value into that instead of making it seem like actually what's most important is that you have a career first and then you have a family. The way I see it, what's most important is happiness and joy and finding the right partner. If you can establish those things, everything else, it really will fall into place. As woo-woo as that sounds, it's true. Everything else will work itself out and fall into place. Um, but yeah, so the barefoot and pregnant thing, I just have to laugh because again, it's even said with a negative connotation. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with being barefoot and pregnant? And what's wrong with wanting to be a good wife to your husband? This is another thing that we just poo poo all over in modern society. Like, oh, taking care of your husband, you're a slave. You're a slave. You might as well be a slave. And it doesn't have to be like that because it's a two-way street. You take care of your husband and your husband takes care of you. This is not a one-way relationship. One of these things does not have to be missing the equal and opposite from the other party. And so when women say things like that to me, when they say, you want us to just be barefoot and pregnant, you want us to be relying on it? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's a two-way street. And what I'm saying is we need to put more value back into motherhood and pregnancy and take all of the emphasis off of no, 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 go out and get your career and do that first and put motherhood on the back burner. That's not the answer for everyone. And so a more balanced perspective is really what we need. And lastly, cultural bias. Her conclusions reflect a traditionalist Christian worldview, which critics say influences how she interprets historical evidence. I really can't argue with that, to be honest. She is a Christian woman. Her husband has a podcast called The Crucible. There is no denying that. But as someone who considers herself a Christian, I have to say, what's wrong with that? Christianity is one of the few religions that preaches love and not hate. And so, what's wrong with Christian worldviews? How are they so bad that looking through the world with a Christian ideology, like how is that so bad? Somebody make that make sense. Again, I can't argue with it because she is a Christian woman, so I'm not going to dispute that. But I can also say, what's wrong with that? What is so bad about that? What's bad about it is it goes against a radical feminist ideology. The real intellectual question raised by the book, regardless of agreement, her work raises a broader philosophical question. What were the trade-offs of modern social changes? Some of those examples include women's economic independence versus family structure stability, individual freedom versus social cohesion, and career prioritization versus fertility timing. Even critics can acknowledge these are real demographic and cultural debates happening today. I don't know if you all are aware of this, but in countries like China, the birth replacement rate is not good. For a long time in China, they had this like one child law where families could only have one kid. I literally shudder to think about how that was enforced. But these things happen. These things are real. And in many countries that also followed a career, like let's build up this society, let's forego having children, I don't think they thought about the long-term impacts of what that would do. And ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm going to go back to the deficit. All you hear for years and years to come is Social Security is about to be completely depleted. And I'm telling you right now, if somebody tells me I'm not getting my Social Security after I've been paying into that fund since I was 14 working at McDonald's, I will be pissed because it's definitely a small subset of income that I am relying on in retirement because I sure as hell don't want to be working till I'm 80 doing a job I don't love. If I'm working when I'm 80, I better be having a good damn time because I want to be able to retire on time. It would be a blessing if I could retire early. But again, at the end of the day, we need to be having babies to keep society functioning. And children are not a drain on society. They are the very thing that keeps society going. A simple 5-point summary of all of this. Wilson argues feminism was influenced by elites and ideological networks. She claims early feminist movements had connections to occult and spiritual circles. She believes feminism contributed to family instability and gender role confusion. She frames her critique through a Christian worldview, emphasizing motherhood and family. What's wrong with that? And her goal is to provoke a reevaluation of the story of women's liberation. Now, in closing, just want to say to all the working moms out there, I know that this is not easy. We cannot turn back the hands of time. But I would ask you, if you could turn back the hands of time, what would you do different? And I will tell you in full transparency, I would have tried to be a little bit better planning to have a baby, and I would have tried a lot harder to not work or to not work full time. 100% hands down, because dropping your children off at daycare is one of the most difficult things that you will ever have to do. And in one sense, you feel so empowered when you're somebody who believes you're like the working mom. But once that baby comes out and you have to do that first drop off, it's freaking heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. Even if you have the job that you love, it still hurts. It still hurts. And for a lot of us, we just don't have the family unit of once upon a time where, you know, grandparents are living at home or the family all lives on the same block or in the same town and everybody helps each other. That's just another thing that we've lost to this society that's just overworked, exhausted, and dealing with this crazy government inflation. That'll do it for this episode today. I was hoping to give you some updates on the war in Iran, but doesn't really go hand in hand with the message in this episode. So hopefully by the next time I get to doing an update on that, there'll be a lot more information because things are trickling out. I still wouldn't say I've made up my mind one way or the other, whether I support this war, but you'll have to wait for another episode to hear my thoughts on that. In any event, I appreciate you listening. As always, remember, it's so crucial that you follow and subscribe wherever you are listening to What a Fuster Cluck. That's what helps build us up in the algorithm. So I appreciate you for listening. I appreciate everyone who has stuck with this podcast. New episodes drop every Monday. What a Fuster Cluck. I am your host, Lolita Keys. Thank you. As always, like, share, subscribe, follow, email me, whatafusterclucklk@gmail.com with show topic requests or with guest ideas. Thank you all so much. And until next time.